Welcome into this Telstra virtual event. I'm Justin Cleveland and really excited today because we have a security specialist and, quite frankly, a security genius on the line with us, Nir Zuk from Palo Alto Networks. If you know the name, you know it's also with a host of other businesses and also was causing a lot of trouble in his younger days on the internet. So I'm excited to talk with him, and we'll start that conversation in just a moment here. But I want to tell you some of the things you could do here on the platform. You can, if you need to move any of the boxes around, feel free to resize to your needs, make the presentation bigger because we have a lot of good information coming at you today. And also, please, at any point, submit a question through the question and answer box there on the bottom of the widgets of your screen. Just let us know what you're thinking about, what you have questions on, and we'll be more than happy to respond to you. We have a host of people here responding via text and via chat, as well as we'll take a lot of these questions here on air. So with no further ado, let's go ahead and get into the conversation with Nir Zuk. He is the founder and CTO of Palo Alto Networks, and we're going to be talking about a wide range of things here today. I'm Justin Cleveland, your host for this event. So let's start off by talking a little bit about the future state of security. And to look into the future, I think we have to just look at the last calendar year. What were some of the things that we saw in 2014 that were surprises to you? Nothing.
Meaning all the security breaches that you hear about did not come as a surprise. I think that if you sit back and you look at what most enterprises are doing to defend themselves, they're really using technology that was invented in the early 90s, the mid-90s. I was part of inventing some of it and was watching as the other parts of it were invented. And it just doesn't make sense that technology that was invented in the mid-90s
is still causing problems, yeah.
It can still do something for you
right.
against the very innovative cybercrime industry.
Yeah. So actually, before we get too technical, I do want to dig in a little bit into who is in our audience and ask a question of you in the audience. You'll see a question box pop up in your screen right now. So I want to know, what role do you play in regards to security within your organization? Are you the primary, the principal, the person that is responsible for security? Do you have a hand in the security, be it policy, be it response, or are you not responsible whatsoever? Perhaps just sign off on security decisions that other people are making. So let me know what your sort of technical level is within your organization here. And I think it's kind of it might be a missed question there, is everybody should be responsible at least at some level for security within an organization, right?
Yes, I think that everybody needs to be aware of security and be aware of risks. And many of the attacks that we hear about are exploiting what we call social engineering techniques.
Yeah. So that's just relying on the fact that we as people ultimately are dumb and are going to click on something and not really think through perhaps the potential problems.
Correct.
Yeah. So actually, it's interesting because we see a lot of emails that just have simple spelling mistakes, that have just those obvious flaws that otherwise, to my eyes, even would look good. Why are we entering a point where people are going to do a little copy editing on their spam and it's going to get, or on their phishing attacks, and it's going to get better?
Yes, and I think we're also at a point where it's more than phishing attacks. For example, we're seeing a lot of attacks, especially targeted attacks, where most phishing attacks target a very wide very large number of people, and the assumption is if you're going to send a phishing email to 1 million people, then 1,000 of them will click on it, and 5 will get compromised.
Yeah, and that's enough.
And that's enough for you. When you start talking about targeted attacks, which is really what I think enterprises should really worry about, because that's where the biggest losses are, and the more dedication on the attacker side is. With those attacks, phishing is just one way of getting you. We're at a point today where a simple PDF document or a single Excel spreadsheet sent to a few of your employees can start a chain reaction at the end of which you lose everything you have.
Right.
So it's not just phishing attacks.
Yeah.
And I think part of the problem is that social media is enabling the attackers to do a lot of to study you, do a lot of reconnaissance before they even hit you.
Right.
So, for example, if I want to target company XYZ, I would first go to LinkedIn, find out who works for company XYZ. Then I can use tools like Facebook and Twitter and simple Google searches and others to figure out who are the friends of your employees, what is it that your employees like.
Right, so they can get in a back door. So my buddy Bob sends me an email about fishing, not PH fishing, but actually fishing, going fishing for fish. And
maybe you know Bob, and you like fishing, and it's just a PDF document describing maybe the latest fishing gear, and you double-click on it, and 2 minutes later, the attackers are on your machine controlling it, and then from there jumping to the rest of your network.
Yeah, and so there are a lot of very simple things that are still happening, but it seems like there's still a human element in here. How much is this taken over just technological? So that because so I do the physical research. How much of it is that there's just a computer out there or compromised computers out there that are just running this perpetually?
It depends if it's a targeted attack or not.
Yes.
So some attacks are automated, and some attacks are done by very skilled people that watch and monitor every step of the attack, and they're always on top of it. And
so the big data breaches that we heard about in the U.S., Target, Home Depot last year, were those targeted attacks or were those just general phishing?
They were all targeted attacks.
Okay, they were all targeted. So somebody had in mind, I'm going to get access to Home Depot and their credit card, the credit cards of users.
Yeah, basically they start with a goal, right? My goal is to get to the data center. My goal is to get where Home Depot or Target or whatever is storing the credit card numbers, or maybe I want to get on their POS machines and read credit card numbers over there and then find a way to get those out. But the target, no pun intended, was, let's go to where the credit card numbers are, lift them and use them.
Yeah, and it's not something that you may think I haven't been hit yet, so I'm fine. But this can take 6 months, a year before somebody actually uses that number. So there's not an immediate sense of breach. This may take a while.
It's interesting. I had a discussion yesterday with someone here in the banking industry, and I think that the reason we hear about some of these attacks in the U.S. is because U.S. credit card issuers have become really, really good at detecting fraud. In the last, I think, year or year and a half, I got 2 calls from my bank, and they were both true, meaning no false positives, of my credit card number being used somewhere else in the United States. One of them was, I think, in Florida, and one of them was in Texas. And I fly all over the place.
Right. So
somehow the bank knew that the person in Florida using my credit card was not me, and the person in Texas using my credit card was not me. And I think that some of these attacks that you hear about, the reason we know about them is not because of tools that the enterprise was using to detect attacks, but rather the banks are becoming so good at detecting fraud. And if you're a card issuer and you find out that one of the common things to 100,000 of your recent fraud attempts was that those 100,000 people shopped at XYZ, then you know that XYZ is probably compromised.
I got a call from my bank. Actually, it was just a couple of weeks ago. I have a U.S. Capital One card, and they said, a $700 purchase was made at Newegg. Was this you? And I said it I repeated at Newegg, and my partner in the background said, well, you shop at Newegg all the time. And I'm like, yeah, but I haven't in 6 months. And they were able to, track activity and be able to say, wait a second, there's something not right here. But you're right. It's a lot of it at, the bank end, which is great until the person who's got that information figures out how to work around that system. So it seems like we need to put up a lot more prevention so that those numbers don't get out in the first place.
Exactly.
Yeah. So taking some of the numbers from our Telstra cybersecurity report came out about a month ago, has a lot of very good information. In fact, everybody on this call will be sent a copy of this. It'll be in about a day or so. You'll get a link. You can click on it. Lots of APAC-specific information in there. But one of the things that we found is a lot of companies are going to be increasing or at least maintaining their spending for security in the next year, which is great. But if we're not spending that money smart, it's ultimately not going to help. So if we're just throwing money at a problem, it's not targeted enough. Where would you look at as the best way to spend money?
Yeah. First, I'd say that if you're going to spend that money on doing the same thing again, just maybe a little bit more, it's not going to save anything.
Right.
The other thing I'd say before answering your questions directly is that you can sit back in your couch or wherever you are, in your chair in the office or on your couch at home, wherever you're listening to us, and say, well, yeah, I'm better than them.
Right.
Well, you're not.
It'll never happen to me. Yeah.
You're not, okay? You're using exactly the same technology and exactly the same processes that all these other companies that did get compromised, or at least know that they got compromised,
Right.
were using. You're using the same firewalls that they're using and the same antivirus technology that they're using and the same IPS technology, and I can go through a bunch of acronyms here, and you're using the same thing that they're using.
So it's interesting you say that because a lot of us don't know that we've been breached until it's far too late.
Yes.
I mean, the PlayStation Network was an example of that. Months later, they were really saying, oh, by the way, we got hacked. And a lot of data has already been compromised. People just didn't know where it came from.
And the funny thing is that you always go back and look at the logs, and you find out that you actually knew about it.
Right. Nobody just recognized the signs.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, we talk about, especially in the security industry, the response, because it's been a lot of backpedaling from companies saying, oh no, something happened. Ultimately, a lot of security and insurance goes toward dealing with the problem. But I think your perspective is, and we're going to get into a little bit of this now, is to not let that happen in the first place.
I think that a lot of the focus today in the industry is around let's detect the attacks and remediate as quickly as possible.
Sure. So once somebody's already trying to punch you, then try to block it.
Well, first you have to detect that someone punched you,
right?
And then you have to do something about it very quickly before you hit the ground, right? So and sometimes you can, most cases you cannot, and I think that that's important. I mean, you have to do that. That I think that the working assumption or the goal should be let's prevent those attacks from the get-go.
Mm-hmm.
Yesterday we had a lunch in Melbourne with 20-something security professionals, and it was a little bit depressing because I think the agreement within the security professionals there, and I think I was the only one who voiced anything different. The agreement there was that we kind of lost the battle to the bad guys. There's nothing you can do. They're going to come in and they're going to take whatever they want, and we just have to make sure that we don't look bad.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, really, that was the sentiment around the table. And I just disagree with that.
Mm-hmm.
I think that the right thing to do is to say, I can prevent those attacks.
Right.
And find ways to prevent those attacks. And then say, well, I'm not going to prevent all the attacks. So those that I don't prevent, let's try to detect them and remediate them as soon as possible.
But if we can block 9 out of 10 or 99 out of 100, then we've done a lot of due diligence.
Correct. And yes, you first I think you can block more than 99 out of 100.
Really?
And so that's the first thing. And the second thing is that I think that when you start. When your basic working assumption is that I'm going to block attacks,
yep,
and not just detect and remediate,
yep,
then even your detection and remediation becomes much better.
So because you understand what could potentially slip through?
Yes, I think so. And then the other thing I would say is that we like to talk about remediation. Mm-hmm. We don't really remediate today. I mean, real remediation would be we're going to fly to China and convince them to erase the source code they just stole from us.
Right.
Right? Or we're going to fly to Russia and have a discussion with the mafia there and convince them to return the $100 million they just stole from the bank.
Right.
That's real remediation.
I think, actually, this brings up a very good point, and I don't think a lot of people have a sense of who are the bad guys? Because, we hear about the Russian mafia. Okay. We hear about, we just assume that there are bad guys out there, but we don't know who they are or what they're using this for. So who would you say are the bad guys?
That's funny. We just came here to Telstra from a meeting with one of the banks here in Sydney, and we had a similar discussion yesterday. I don't remember if it was a bank or some other customer yesterday in Melbourne, and I think it was a local government customer in Melbourne. And I asked in both cases, there were a few security professionals from the government agency and from the bank here in Sydney. I asked them the same question. I asked them, which adversary are you worried about, right? Who's going to attack you? And the three people gave me three different answers. They couldn't even agree among themselves who's the attacker and who they need to worry about.
Right.
One said we need to worry about government, foreign governments, and the other one said we need to worry about hacktivists,
right.
And the third one was worried about just criminal organizations start trying to steal information or to steal money. And
yeah. Does it ultimately matter?
Yes.
Oh, really?
I mean, I think first you have to figure out who's your adversary.
Okay.
And then you have to find out how your adversary would usually attack you, what they're after, right? I mean, it's important what they're after. Maybe it's less important who the adversary is, but it's important what they're going after. You have to find out what they're going after, and then figure out what tools they usually use, and that should be the basis for your security. I mean, today it's upside down. Today, first we buy security tools, and then we try to figure out what to do with them.
Right. So we've got something out there. Okay, we figure out this is what everybody has been buying, so this should protect us, but we ultimately don't know what we are trying to be protected from.
Yes. You know, I mean, if you're Australia and you're worried about someone coming onto your shores, then you're probably going to invest more in your Navy.
Right.
And if you're worried about, you know, some airplanes coming in from Asia, then you're probably going to invest more in your Air Force.
Right.
And these are completely different. And the same thing applies to cybersecurity.
Yeah.
You have to know who's attacking you,
what they're using,
what they're going after, and then you have to adjust your plan according to that. And we don't do that today.
Yeah. So we've hit on a bit of this, of sort of the process of the social engineering a bit, but I do really want to reinforce that these can come from, and likely will come from, someone that you know.
Or appear to be coming from someone
right,
that you know.
Right. Ultimately, we're hoping that my buddy Bob is not actually trying to hack my company, though he might.
No, it's going to be someone who knows that Bob is your buddy because they found out on Facebook that you're friends with Bob and that you're fishing together.
Yeah.
And yes.
Well, not spear fishing. Actually.
Not spear fishing.
That's actually rather.
Actually, spear fishing is much more difficult than.
Oh, well, yeah.
Have you ever tried to stick a stick on the?
I can barely get him to get on the hook, so exactly. I can't even imagine how difficult that is. So let's talk a little bit about security spend and the security budget. From your perspective, and obviously you're coming at this from the Palo Alto Network's perspective, but where do you start with a security spend rather than looking at it and going, okay, everybody buys X? I mean, do you start even earlier and look at your adversary first, or who you're anticipating that adversary to be?
You look at your adversaries, you look at the targets that they're going after, you look at the tools that they would usually use. Yes, of course, you have to start from that. But what you don't do is something that we're seeing more and more happening right now is you don't panic.
Yeah.
And you don't buy whatever you buy out of panic.
Right. Yeah.
Just because you need to do something and.
Sure, because you feel that it will be some sort of a remediation, but ultimately if you're buying a fire extinguisher after your house is on fire, it's a bit too late.
The problem is that people don't even buy fire extinguishers today. They just buy random stuff because they think that that's what's going to save them without really understanding what is it that they're trying to defend against.
Yeah.
So I would take a step back and do something that surprisingly is not being done that much, which is think about, again, what are you trying to defend against? And then come up with a security architecture.
Right. And let's move ahead a bit to the target example, because I think this is a very good one to look at a security system. And take me through what are systems that are in place, why aren't they working?
I think that there were multiple failures at Target, and I think that Target had the opportunity to stop the attack at multiple stages, and they just failed at each and every stage. And without talking specifically about Target, I'll tell you that in general, and this is true for almost all the enterprises that I see, both here in Australia and in other places, the way they approach security is by buying point products that are trying to, I mean, I have a slide about here, whack-a-mole, right?
Right,
I mean,
yeah.
Basically, I think that, I think it's this one.
Yep.
Yeah. You know, it's kind of, the approach today is the whack-a-mole approach.
Yeah.
Right? Every time there is a new security problem or a perceived security problem, which is a mole, we're going to find the best tool to hit that security problem on the head and get rid of it. But guess what? When you do that, you have two other moles.
Right, and you're so focused on the one where it was that you're blinded a bit to the other ones that could
exactly, and exactly. And the different security solutions that you end up buying don't talk to each other. They all have different configuration, different management systems, different skills that are required within your employee base, your security team. And ultimately, this is very prone to errors. And if you look at the slide here right now, this is what we call the kill chain. So the kill chain would be, let's take a step back. One of the only good pieces of news that I can offer to those that are trying to defend against the attacks is that as the attacker, you have to be successful at multiple steps of a typical attack,
right,
in order to to ultimately do what you want to do, right? And again, the good news, the only piece of good news probably here is that as the good guys, we have to stop them just at one.
Yeah.
Meaning if we're able to stop the attack at one of the steps that the attacker needs to take in order to perform the attack, then we win.
Right.
So what happens is that each of these steps of the attack becomes what we call a kill point, potential way to kill the attack. And this set of kill points is what we call the kill chain.
Yeah.
And today, the approach to the kill chain is more a whack-a-mole approach, meaning we look at individual steps of a typical attack, right? If you look at the step, I think it's step number 3 or 4 over there, where there's malware involved.
Yep.
Then, today we buy antivirus. Why do we buy antivirus? Because we need to stop malware from getting on an endpoint. Yep. And today we buy technology called IPS. Why do we buy IPS? For steps number 1 and number 5.
Yeah.
And then we go and buy that technology for step number 6, and this technology for step number 3, and that technology for step number 7, and they don't talk to each other. And we end up with a lot of different solutions that are focused each on a different step of the kill chain.
Yep.
And whenever one of them learns about an attack at step number 3, it doesn't update the tools at step number 5 to go and stop these attacks, because these are 2 different hammers that we use on 2 different molds.
Yeah.
And obviously that doesn't work.
Yeah. Well, I mean, looking at it from a mid-sized business perspective, they're just trying to be as efficient as possible because they probably don't have somebody who's dedicated strictly to security. So
they have Telstra.
Right.
Right. I mean, they have the organization that probably sells them the security. And if I were to buy a security solution, I would look at the reseller or the integrator I buy the security product from to come in and tell me about those things.
Yeah, to make sure that they all play nice
and
together.
do that for me.
Yeah.
And by the way, so when you take a step back and you stop trying whack-moles, but come up with a security architecture, and then you sit down and you break that security architecture into what you actually need to do, very often you'll find out that you actually save money even.
Yeah. Well, and when I look at this, the kill chain, I essentially am thinking, okay, what step is the easiest to break? And I know a lot of businesses are going to come at it from that perspective.
But that's the wrong approach.
Yeah. So you say step back and really just assess your business needs first.
Assess your business risks first.
Right.
Who's going to attack me? What are they going to attack? How they're going to do it? And then what is my security architecture to deal with it? And then go and put in the security tools that are going to be part of that architecture.
Yeah.
And if the answer to your architecture is I'm going to continue whack-moles, then it's probably the wrong answer. But if that's the answer, then fine, continue to whack-moles.
Okay.
If the answer to that question is, well, I need a platform, I need to take the entire kill chain at once.
Yep.
And have different components that deal with different steps of the kill chain talk to each other. Which, by the way, I believe results in a much increased chance of detecting and preventing the attack, then that's the answer.
Then great, yeah, because if we can really stem it, that's fantastic. So the one thing we've always talked about with security, with cloud security in particular, is that you need a customized solution because the one-size-fits-all ultimately is going to leave some vulnerabilities.
So I think that cloud security, so first there are 2 kinds of cloud securities. There is I'm going to place my applications in a public cloud infrastructure, and I need to protect that. And there's also the SaaS applications that you use that need to be protected as well. I think that should be part of the security architecture. Meaning if you find yourself asking yourself, or you and your colleagues find yourselves asking yourselves, what solution am I going to use to protect my cloud deployments, then you're asking the wrong question.
Yeah.
Because that question has to be asked at the same time you're asking yourself, what am I going to do to protect my on-premise data centers, and what am I going to do to protect my SaaS applications, and what I'm going to do to protect my end users, because these are all parts of the same problem.
I'm seeing a lot of companies move to bring your own device. So you have your own iPad, your own Android phone, and you bring it and you put it on the corporate network. Would you advocate more of a lockdown architecture so that the company provides everything and everything is controlled, or do you accept that this new platform is going forward, and can we protect that?
I'll tell you from my experience, again, I'm not sure exactly how it works here in Australia, but from my experience around the world, it's very hard to tell users what to do.
Right.
So it doesn't matter what you think is right from a security perspective. I think reality is that in most cases, you will not be able to tell your users what they can and cannot do with their phone.
Yeah, that's true.
Or with a tablet. So you have to deal with it.
They'll find a backdoor to get it in which case it's not going to be protected anyway.
Or they'll find an employer that lets them use their phone the way they want to use their phone.
That's true. So let's run through some of the platform steps that we have to do for prevention.
So again, you look at the kill chain, you look at different points of the kill chain, and if you move forward here with these slides, you'll see, I mean, what I have here is just I'm showing how good we are at different steps. And you'll see that today, when we try to whack moles, we'll usually detect between 10 and 30% and maybe prevent between 10 and 30% of the attacks at each given state. If you move forward, you'll see that, going through the different steps, the detection and prevention rates are extremely low when you try to whack moles.
Right.
When you take a step back and you learn about your adversaries and you learn about what they try to do, and then you look at it from a platform perspective, meaning, again, you look at the kill chain in its entirety, you look at the entire kill chain,
right,
and you focus on it from a platform perspective, then the detection and prevention rates go up significantly, as you can see in one of the following slides.
Yeah.
I hope you have that.
Yeah. So we will. We've talked a little bit about the technology, but let's talk about employee integration too, because I think that's important. You need to have everybody on the same page and not trying to circumvent the system because it's easier.
Right.
What can we do to help train employees or at least get them aware of the potential for security problems?
So maybe we'll take a step back. I think that the approach of trying to stop employees from doing something that they believe that they need to do to perform their job is not the right approach for two reasons. The first reason, which is probably less important, is that you're just going to be less productive. And I think that the second reason is that they're going to do it anyways.
Right.
So instead of trying to stop your users from using, say, let's say something like Dropbox,
right,
to share files, you can't.
Yep.
They're going to use Dropbox.
Yeah.
The difference between you trying to stop them from using Dropbox to you trying to find a way to let them use Dropbox in a safe way under your parameters is that with the latter, you have some control over it, and you have a better chance of detecting issues.
Yeah, so you know everything that your employees are doing, or at least you can monitor for network aberrations.
Exactly. So if you let them use Dropbox, and you find a way to monitor the use of Dropbox and to control the use of Dropbox and to make sure they don't do anything stupid with Dropbox, then at least you have a chance of making sure that attacks are not going to come in via Dropbox.
Yeah.
If you just try to block Dropbox, then you're never going to see what your employees are doing with Dropbox. They're going to do it anyways.
And I'm going to find a way around the system.
Exactly. So my first advice, and probably the most important advice, is don't fight your employees.
Right.
Work with them on providing them access to the tools that they believe that they need to do their job.
Well, ask them directly, what do you need? And make sure that there's an open policy.
That's one option. The other option is just, look at your traffic, and from the traffic you can see what they're actually using.
You're right, yeah. Hey, everybody's going to Dropbox. That's good to know.
Yeah, well, let's find out why they're using Dropbox.
Yeah.
And then let's find out how we can get an enterprise account with Dropbox.
Yep.
And how we can secure that enterprise account with Dropbox, and work with our employees to make sure that they use it in a safe way.
So,
and then comes the training.
Right.
Here's how you use Dropbox in a safe way.
We have this. We have Box, and it's great. Here's how you use it appropriately, and make sure they understand the ins and outs and how sharing accounts matters.
Exactly.
Yeah, great. So let's talk a little bit about the next generation security platform, because we've gotten, I think, to the point where we understand that whack-a-mole and piecemeal security just isn't going to work. So then what do we do going forward?
I think that what we do going forward is we stop whacking moles. and again, we integrate the different security components that we have with a central brain that, and by the way, I think that brain should be central not just to each enterprise by itself, but to everyone.
Right. So are you talking a human brain or just
No,
the
talking
system.
about systems.
Yeah, okay.
The amount of information that you need to deal with here is so big that humans are never going to be able to catch up.
Right.
You have to find a way to automate it. I think my point is that, like with many other things in life, the more data you have, the better decisions you can make as to whether something is good or bad.
Yeah.
And it's really all about data. We're seeing more and more, I hate the term big data because marketing terms, and I don't like marketing, but we're seeing a lot of different things in our lives right now being solved with big data.
Yeah.
Like healthcare.
Sure.
Instead of trying to understand diseases, we're just going to see what works and what doesn't work against these diseases using big data, and we're going to do the things that work.
Yeah.
We don't know why they work, but we know they work because we have the data to show us that they work.
Yep.
A lot of, that's one of the newest approach to healthcare.
But it just streamlines what was an old process, which was trial and error. And now it's just we're able to see trial and error from a wide grouping of people all around the world, and I think it just speeds things.
And I think the same applies to security, meaning the more information we collect, if we collect a lot of information and we process that information in a semi-intelligent way, then we can find a lot of bad things that we don't detect today when we try to do it individually on an individual customer or location of the network or endpoint basis. And I think that's really where the security world is going to.
Yeah. So where do we draw the line? And do you think in the near future there's going to be the potential for not just a very quickly reacting system, but a system that can anticipate threats?
I think there are systems like that.
Really? Okay.
I think those systems are not provided by the traditional incumbent vendors.
Sure.
And probably one of the things that our listeners need to do in order to move to systems like that is to give up on using their favorite incumbent vendor that really hasn't done much for them in the last 20 years, and probably look for newer approaches.
Or just step back and look at your entire security platform and figure out what you're doing and whether it works.
Yes. I think that the answer to whether it works or not is very simple. Your systems are very similar to the system that Target and Home Depot and all the others were using, so guess what? It doesn't work.
Right, and that's just because that's the system that always has been.
Well, the firewall that you're using today is the same firewall that I helped create at Check Point 20 years ago, right? I mean, the same stateful inspection technology that started becoming popular in the mid-90s is what you're using today in your firewall.
Right.
Not a single difference. The GUI is different, the packaging is different, but the actual firewall engine today is no different than what you were using 20 years ago. The antivirus engines that you're using today are the same antivirus engines that we were using in the early 90s, late 80s.
Yeah.
And we can go through each and every technology that you use today to try to protect yourself, and you will see that for the most part, these technologies are from the early to mid-90s.
Right. Well, they just weren't designed to work together, and it sounds like we've got more comprehensive packages now.
And also, you got to assume that the bad guys haven't been sleeping since the mid-90s and have been developing new methods of getting on your network and on your systems, and it's kind of, doesn't make sense that something that's 20 years old is really protecting you against the newer attacks.
Yeah. So let's look at some more comprehensive security platforms and things that we can do. Yes or no question, can we prevent attacks?
Yes. Okay, I think everybody's preventing some attacks today. I think that most of the attacks that we are preventing today are what we call the script kiddies attacks. A script kiddie is basically a bored 16 years old male that has no girlfriend, so on Friday night, they try to prove to their imaginary friends that they can break into your network, and we can stop those attacks today.
Sure.
We don't. I think that the existing infrastructure that most enterprises use cannot stop the real attack.
Yeah.
And I think we can stop many of the real attacks.
And that's what we were talking about before. That's the Chinese. That's the Russian mob. That's the people who have deep malicious intention.
That's the attacker that has a lot of money behind them. That's the attacker that has a lot of time behind them.
Yeah.
And that's the very focused attacker that knows exactly what they're going after, and they're willing to spend time and money to do that as long as they know that they're going to gain from it much more than they put into it.
Well, time and money is a precious resource for businesses, particularly the small to medium business. Say we have 100 employees. What's the best way we can make an investment now that's going to prevent some of those malicious attackers?
If you're a business that has 100 employees, so okay, let's take this step back. Our goal is not to prevent 100% of the attacks. Our goal is, for the most part, to make it more expensive for the attacker to attack us than they can gain out of the attack.
Yeah.
Now, sometimes that's impossible, right? I mean, if the goal of the attacker is to make sure that some movie doesn't air,
right,
it's not about money.
Yeah.
Right? Or if their goal is to shut down the cooling system of a nuclear reactor.
That's significant.
Probably it's not about money.
Right.
But if you're a business with 100 people, then it's probably about money. And the good news for you is that since there isn't much for you to lose, in terms of, okay, what is the bad guy going to steal from you?
Right.
What is it going to be worth for the attacker? They're probably not going to spend a lot of money on attacking you.
Right.
So you need a relatively simple security solution that's just going to make it a little bit more difficult for the attacker to attack you.
Right.
I think the real focus should be on the higher end of the market at the enterprise level, where there is much more to lose.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about why Palo Alto, why did you found and create this, and what are you doing today?
So I created Palo Alto Networks because I realized that what I said before, it was in the mid-90s. I spent several years at Check Point, and then I spent several years at some other security vendors. I built the first IPS in the world, and that was acquired by NetScreen, that was acquired by Juniper. So I built at least two of the leading security systems in the world. And I realized that the companies that I built them for were not necessarily focused on trying to upgrade their technology to where it should be, to continuously dealing with attacks as they become more and more sophisticated. Sure. And that's essentially why I started Palo Alto Networks. And if you look at what happened since then, we've grown very, very fast. We are today the number 4, I think, player in the enterprise security market. And if you look at our growth rates versus the growth rates of our competitors, I think that we have a good shot at being the largest enterprise security vendor in the market this decade.
Yeah.
By the end of the decade.
So I want to turn back to the audience now and ask you a question. So what do you believe would benefit your security, your organization's security the most? Would it be better technology, so an investment in rack space? Would it be more security resources, perhaps having someone who's a part or full dedicated, or would it be user education? I don't know that any of these are necessarily divorced, but which would be your first pick? So why don't you tell me that through the poll question there on your screen? And let's move a little bit more into what's the next step for someone who is concerned about security. How do you start that conversation, and how do you look at your own business and say we may be in a position to lose something and there may be a hole? How do you even look at that?
So I think that businesses know best what is it that they can lose. So assume that everything you have is lost, right? Meaning the bad guys got hold of everything you have. Maybe they erased everything you have. They
your reputation is
you
gone,
have.
Yeah.
And then you as a business owner, or at least if it's a bigger business, then you as the risk management group within that business knows what that means.
Right.
So you're the best to know that. Now, how to translate that into a security architecture and what to do with it, sometimes you have the expertise to do it. In most cases, you probably want to ask the experts, like Telstra, for example, to come in and figure out what's the right thing for you to do, right?
Yeah. So, I think it's a cost-benefit analysis. You know, how much is my business worth, but how much is that data worth, and what would it cost me if I lost my customer lists, my inventory list, my everything,
right? As
opposed to how much I'm going to spend. So how do you balance that in your mind?
It's a simple business decision, I think. Right? If you have to spend $1 million to protect $100,000, I wouldn't do it.
Right. So it looks like user education, our audience is coming back and saying they really want to get all of their employees in on this conversation. Is that something that you can just start saying, hey guys, maybe you should change your passwords once in a while? Or what's a good conversation to have with
I think it's naive to think that by educating your user base, you're actually going to solve the problem.
Oh, really?
I think it's a part of the problem. I don't think it's the biggest part of the problem.
Yeah.
Or the solution, sorry. It's part of the solution. It's not the biggest part of the solution. At the end of the day, a good attacker will get your employees to do something stupid no matter how much you train them.
Yeah.
Okay? And but nevertheless, you have to train them on security.
Certainly.
And first, you have to understand what the risks are. And then train them on security. And there are some basic things you can train your users not to do. Don't click on links.
Right.
Right? I mean, that's...
If it looks funny, it probably is. Yeah.
Even if it doesn't look funny, check it twice. And if you have any doubt, then call the help desk and ask them whether you should click on it or not. I think that physical security is another important component of security that's sometimes neglected.
I agree wholeheartedly, but bring me your perspective.
sometimes the easiest way to steal your data is to actually walk into your organization, onto your premise, and take it.
Well,
don't neglect that.
Where you're supposed to be, and you can just walk in.
Yes. So make sure your employees don't let other people walk in and they verify that they know them and that they have a badge at least and stuff like that. Don't stick USB keys in your laptop. There are a bunch of basic security rules that each and every employee needs to be aware of, but I think it's naive to think that that's going to fix the problem.
So when you contact Telstra and we work through a program with Palo Alto Networks, one of the things that comes through is an application visibility report.
Yes.
Take me through what is this and what does it do?
So one of the things we do very often is that we take one of our appliances and we hook it up to your network in a passive way. We don't even go into the network. We passively listen to your network, and we give you a report of what's running on the network. Mm-hmm. And usually the result of that is an oh crap moment of really?
Everybody's using Dropbox and they're not supposed to be, something like that.
And Dropbox is a good example. I mean, there are worse.
It's fairly benign.
Dropbox. And we see that every time we go and do that. And then the result of it is usually either, sometimes relatively rare, the result is don't tell anyone about it and I don't want to see you here again.
Right.
Usually the result of it is, okay, let's figure out how to solve this.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So you've got then a sense of where your holes might be so that you can start patching those?
Yes, it shows you where your holes are. And the reason... part of the reason of why we can show you where the holes are and your existing platforms cannot do that is because we've built our platform recently and your existing platforms were built a long time ago and aren't really focused on detecting what the bad guys are trying to do right now.
Yeah.
It's a free thing. I mean, our partners like Telstra will come in and do it for free for you.
Yeah, which is a very nice service.
Which is a very nice service. And, the reason we do it for free is because we know that when you're going to see what you see, very, very often you're going to end up buying the product.
Yeah. So there's a lot of information about there that we can get. And this is something you just reach out to your account executive, or if you want to start a conversation with Telstra, just go to telstra.com/business enterprise, and we'll be more than happy to start that conversation with you. I also wanted to talk, as we have just a couple of minutes here left, about specific threats to areas. And we just put together, and I mentioned it earlier, it came out not too long ago, the Telstra Cybersecurity Report for 2014, which looked at threats that were specific to this geographic region. Now, we mentioned that there are people from all over the world that are trying to break in. Do you see there are trends in specific geographical regions that are more likely? So, example, an attack that is more likely here in Australia as opposed to the United States, as opposed to South America?
Not really. I think that the attacks are more vertical specific than geographical specific, meaning when they go after mining companies, it doesn't matter if it's a mining company in Australia or a mining company somewhere else in the world, since I think that many mining companies have the same data that they want to keep, and many of them usually buy their systems from the same vendors, then probably a lot of these attacks are going to look the same.
Yeah.
And it's more about the vertical you're in and your size.
Yeah.
And how much money the attacker can gain from attacking you.
Is it worth my time to attack you?
Yes.
Essentially.
And generally Australian companies are using the same technology to protect themselves as any other enterprise in most of the world. So the attacks will be similar.
Yeah. So we do have just a couple of minutes left, and if you in the audience have any questions you'd like to ask Nir, we'd be more than happy to take them. Please just fill them in on your chat box there on your screen. But it sounds like, I don't want to say people are being naive about security. They're just happy with what they've had because they haven't had a breach. Would you say that's a fair assessment?
That's a fair assessment. I think that the other part of it is that things are changing right now. I think that until recently, you could have, as a security professional, you could have hidden behind your vendor and blamed the vendor for not detecting and stopping the attacks. I think that what we've seen recently in some of the examples that you mentioned, that the board of directors doesn't care about it. So security is becoming a board of director level issue. Okay. And the board of directors doesn't accept I was using best of breed, and what could I have done better?
We spent money. It should have been fine. Yeah.
Well, you either stop the attack or you don't stop the attack. Right. And if you stop the attack, you're a hero. And if you don't stop the attack, then you should probably find a new job, and you can ask the CEO of Target about it.
Well, yeah, that's true. Let's look at it though. Me as a mid-level business, maybe in an IT role, maybe in some sort of role where I touch security. How do I have that conversation up the chain without scare tactics, without saying, hey, look at Target, hey, look at Home Depot, they got hacked, it can happen to us, or they got breached, it could happen to us. How do I have that conversation and start moving up the chain?
I think that the best approach that I've seen being used around the world is to position security as an enabler.
Yeah.
So with security, we can do things that we couldn't have done before, right? Hey, we can go to the cloud.
Yeah. Right.
We could have gone to the cloud before, but now with security, we can go to the cloud.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we can save a lot of money on our infrastructure, right? Or with security, we can use SaaS applications and instead of hosting them on our premise, which is going to save us time and money and maybe even give us better applications. So if you position security to your CIO, to your CEO, to the board as an enabler, and not use scare tactics, right? I mean, the sky is falling, the Chinese are coming, or whatever, then I think you have a better shot at pushing things through.
Yeah. So I have a couple of good questions from the audience. First of all, given the increased use of SSL and cloud apps, how will network solutions remain relevant to securing data?
I think network solutions should decrypt all SSL traffic and inspect SSL traffic as much as they inspect non-SSL traffic. Yep. And if you don't do that, then you're wasting a lot of money.
Yeah, it seems to me that just because there are two streams doesn't mean you don't have to monitor both of them.
Correct. And I think that it's a lot of enterprises, they are focused on looking for the problem where it's easy to find it. Yeah. Right? I mean, just imagine a dark street with a single street light, and you know that there is a coin somewhere there, and you look for it. And today they're looking for it under the light, right? Yeah. They don't look for it elsewhere.
Mm-hmm. We talked briefly about kind of assessing your business and figuring out if you're worth breaching. And we said, just look at your business and you'll know what they're trying to take. But how do I take a step back and say, am I worth their time? If I'm a cafe owner here in Sydney, yeah, sure, there's some traffic coming through here, but it's not that much. How do I assess and how do I determine if I'm worth it?
It's all about money. Mm-hmm. Again, for the most part.
Yeah.
Again, if you're running a nuclear plant, then it's probably a little bit different. But if you're a cafe in Sydney, and by maybe breaking into your business, they can, steal customer information, or they can steal. It's just that I'm not sure what the bad guys will benefit from stealing the customer list of a cafe here in Sydney. I mean, I don't know. Maybe they can break into your bank account, and so if you have $10,000 in your bank account right now, and then that's what you can lose. And all you have to do is to make sure that they need to spend more than $10,000 on doing it.
Yeah. Do the bad guys make money off of this? Is there enough that keeps them going?
It's a business, and it's a very profitable business.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah. I got to get into that business now. It had another
business of protecting it.
Well, yeah, that's the other one. So how is another question? Good question for the audience. How is SSL pinning going to be overcome? So maybe using Chrome and Gmail for business. What are the different ways?
SSL what? Excuse me.
SSL pinning? So how can you...
I'm not sure.
Yeah. So
maybe we use a different term in the US.
Yeah. So how would you use like a Chrome or a Gmail? Because now all of our intranet stuff is handled through Internet Explorer, but a lot of people are going to a lot of different browsers, and that opens up security holes. So how do we get over that? How do we keep those channels secure?
So every time you use a new browser, you really open yourself to... So the reason you become a little bit less secure is because different browsers have different vulnerabilities.
Yeah.
You just have to make sure that the security solutions that you have in place can deal with the vulnerabilities of multiple browsers rather than a single browser.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. By the way, one note came in that I'm now a part-time hacker via, and you've heard it here first. I actually barely know how to turn my computer on, so I no worries for anyone. I can use my phone, and that's about it. Use it as a phone. So that's about the extent of my technical knowledge.
You're using you're delivering a presentation right now.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure there is a guarantee that one of your slides doesn't have content in it that's exploiting a vulnerability in one of your listeners' browser right now and taking over that machine. I mean,
it may well, and I don't know.
It's a very plausible scenario.
Yeah. Well, those are the sorts of things that we try to shoehorn in a variety of new technologies, and everybody out there is writing new code, and they're writing things that are new and flashy, but we don't necessarily know how to defend against that. how do you as a user quickly assess if something could potentially be a risk? Or do you just assume everything's a risk?
Everything is a risk. You don't need to assess it. Everything is a risk, and you just have to deal with it.
Yeah.
Okay? And when I say you have to deal with it, you assume everything is a risk, and you find technology that can deal with, especially the unknown, right? You don't exactly know what the risks are with a given tool, but especially by collecting a lot of information and processing it, as we talked about before, you can deal with those risks even if you don't know what they are exactly.
Right, because you should just have a process and procedure in place for just about everything.
Yes.
Yeah. So I do want to encourage you to give us some feedback. We're going to see a survey pop up here in just a moment, but I do want to really thank you for taking a few minutes and talking with us here at this Telstra virtual event, and also particularly you, Nir, thank you for taking the time, flying out here. I'm assuming you flew out just for this.
Just for this, yes.
And then heading back. Though you told me, you're here for 3 days and then flying?
I spent Tuesday in New Zealand, yesterday in Melbourne, today here, and tomorrow I'm flying home.
So basically you have no idea what time it is and will not until you get back to the United States.
I don't.
Well, I do really want to thank you for taking a few minutes and talking with us. Looking forward to hearing from you in the audience. Like I said, we're going to send you out in your email thanking you for attending this event a copy of the Telstra Cybersecurity Report for 2014. A lot of good tips and tricks in there and things that should start a conversation within your business. And I think that's really the first step for no matter what you're thinking about for security, is just to have the conversation about what are we doing and what can we do next that will help us keep our data safe.
Again, start with the threat.
Yes,
who do we worry about?
Yes. Who might attack us? What do they want? And what can we do about it?
It sounds trivial. Hardly anyone is doing it.
Yeah. Frankly, it's not a thought that I've ever had, is to think about who's going to be throwing that punch.
Yes.
Yeah. So again, thank you all for joining us. A survey will pop up in just a moment. Let us know how we did and what you would like to hear in the future. I do want to let you know we have a Cloud and Shadow IT event coming up on March the 25th, so look for that invite. It's going to be a very interesting event as we talk a lot about the things that we've been talking about here, which is going to the cloud, using apps in the cloud and keeping them safe. And the concept of Shadow IT is not something I'd heard about before we started delving into it, but I think a lot of people are dealing with it as we talked about the bring your own device, the BYOD. So again, thank you all very much for joining us. I'm Justin Cleveland, Nir Zuk from Palo Alto Networks. Thank you very much for joining us, and we look forward to having you at our next event.